Planning a trip this season to one of our four national parks right here in the Pacific Northwest? Curious what to expect? Then stay tuned as we chat with a former national park ranger. Welcome to RV Out West. I'm your host, Brooks. My family of four's base camp is located in the beautiful Pacific Northwest, and our RV adventures radiate out from there. Please grab a mug of coffee and join us as we discuss RVing around the American West. From sweet camping spots, gear and equipment, to tips and tricks, we've got you covered. We are RV Out West. Our public lands belong to each of us. These national treasures, in my opinion, are to be protected for generations to come. In our family, we make it a point to take our children to experience as many as we can together. I love to watch my kids experience our national parks for the first time. Those are the memories that I know I will be taking to my grave, and as my life flashes before me, these are the moments I hope to reflect on during my last few breaths. If you are planning to visit the Olympics, North Cascades, Rainier, or Crater Lake National Parks this summer, then you should be prepared perhaps a little bit more than you normally are. According to one report I've read from TheStreet.com, they said West Coast parks such as Cascade, Mount Rainier, and Olympic have all reported losing 6 employees each. Many of these workers were abruptly pulled away from the process of preparing trails and grounds for the peak park visitor season. Without seasonal staff during this peak season, visitor centers may close, bathrooms will be filthy, campgrounds may close, guided tours will be cut back or altogether canceled, emergency response times will drop, and visitor services like safety advice, trail recommendations, and interpretation will all be unavailable. Joining us today is Hope, a former national park ranger right here in the Pacific Northwest. I'm really excited to talk with her to hear about some of her favorite hikes, places to camp, but also what we can expect with our national park system this summer under this new federal administration. Hope, thank you so much for coming on RV Out West.
Nice to be here.
Yeah, so why don't you start and tell us just a bit about kind of your personal background and what led to your path to making a career with the National Park Service?
I always wanted to study marine biology and kind of got off on some different paths. Went and got married after high school and realized when I was on field trips with my stepdaughters and we were out at the beach that that's where I was the happiest, and decided that I needed to go back to college and do that marine biology degree that I hadn't done. So I went back to school, ended up getting divorced in the process. In order to graduate from college, I needed to do an internship. And I was selected to do a backcountry revegetation internship with Olympic National Park. And so I went out there and I was doing that. And while I was doing that, I met some interpretive park rangers, which I didn't know was a thing. I grew up in the national parks. My parents always took me there, but I never thought about the rangers that did the programs being a special kind of ranger. I decided that's what I wanted to do. So I spent 4 years going back and working every summer after that at Olympic National Park to get my foot in the door, and then finally got my first interpretive ranger position out there, out at the beach, taking people on walks at the beach, teaching them about marine life and beach safety, beach etiquette, a lot of work in the campground, helping people get into their campsites and find places to camp when the campgrounds were full, things like that. And I just loved it. And so the next year I was able to go work at North Cascades National Park as an interpretive ranger. I did that for a couple more years, 3 years total, and ended up being inside a little bit more than I wanted to be inside. And so took a job with Fish and Wildlife, and I've been doing that ever since. So I get to be outside.
What were you doing inside up at the North Cascades National Park?
At North Cascades, it was a lot of visitor center interactions. So people that come in and they're driving through the park because it's mainly a national park that you drive around the national park. You don't actually drive into the national park for most people. You drive through a recreation area, which is a little bit different. It's not people that have necessarily spent a lot of time planning ahead. So they come in and they want to know what to see, what trails they can hike within, right around the freeway or around the highway, and something that's not going to take very long. So lots of answering the same questions over and over, which was fine, because it's new people each time.
Right.
You're like, I know you haven't been here before, and so I'm going to tell you this great stuff, even though I just told somebody else all this great stuff too. And it was just a lot of being inside, which isn't my favorite place to work.
Give me the pitch. I just came to your counter at the Visitor Center at the North Cascades. I only have today. What should I do?
Oh my goodness, it's been a few years. Definitely stop at the Diablo Lake Overlook on your way through. That's one of the most popular places for people to stop and get photos. It's beautiful bluish green water in the summer because of all of the glacial till that's in the water from the glaciers that are melting in all the mountains around us. It's absolutely beautiful. We always warned people that it's very cold. And I remember one time we had kayaks from the national parks that somebody had donated, a governor or something had donated. And so I took a kayak out on Diablo Lake by myself, thinking that I was very well prepared, and I wasn't. And of course, getting into the kayak, I fell out the first time. And my first reaction is, oh my gosh, I'm going to die, because I've been warning people that this water's so cold that if you're in it for 15 seconds, you're probably going to be hypothermic and die. And so I was freaked out for about 10 seconds and then realized I knew how to swim. And it was warmer in the shed that I was in trying to get into the boat. And I was probably going to be okay. And I was able to climb out and made it just fine. I did, when I came back in from my kayaking trip, I couldn't get out of the kayak without it flipping me out of it. So I noticed that the ranger boat was gone. So I just waited in the kayak until the ranger got back and was able to help me get out of the kayak.
That's great.
Love the rangers.
Yeah, exactly. See, they're super helpful, friendly, wonderful people. So you're now with Fish and Wildlife.
I am, yes.
So what kind of things are you doing with Fish and Wildlife?
Oh, it's very, very interesting. I count everybody's fish when they land. I ask them basically what type of fish they caught when they were fishing that day, things that they released, fish that they kept. I take samples from salmon because we track like age groups of Chinook that are being caught because they're endangered species, and just information like that to help with the quota.
I've often wondered about that because I've done a lot of fishing down at the mouth of the Columbia for the spring jack run in like April-ish. And there's always a fish biologist at the dock
Yes.
asking a ton of questions about, yeah, what did you
Yeah, I
catch
know.
and what did you
It's
release?
annoying. I apologize.
No, it's not annoying. No, I think it's wonderful and it's good information. If it'll help with the fish retention and keeping the population healthy, I'm all for it. Did you do any other roles besides being a park ranger interpreter and then the visitor center? Were there any other roles you did within the National Park Service or within your career?
In the National Park Service, that first internship that I had was it was backcountry revegetation. So we would go hike. We spent 2 months actually at the end of our season hiking in and out of Norwegian Memorial on the coast, on the wilderness coast.
Okay.
We would live out there for 10 days. We had a whole bunch of baby plants that we had raised all summer that they had been raising for a couple of years, native plants that were helicoptered in. We were planting those plants out there in the wilderness. It was fantastic. It was the best job I've ever had in my life. And then I went back the next few years and did that. And we did a lot of trail inventory during the summer where we would hike on the trails in the national park and record every single man-made object in the wilderness, because wilderness is a federally designated protected area where you're not supposed to have very much man-made stuff. So signs, campsites, things like that. We would record what they looked like, what condition they were in, where they were at.
So like log bridges and those things
Yep.
too, all of
Yep.
those kind of, yeah. Let's talk about some of your favorite hikes. And this can be not just at Olympic or just at North Cascades. This could be just up in the Cascades. I mean, so where's been some of your favorite hikes and what makes them so special to you?
The hikes into Norwegian Memorial, even though they're rough, it's like I said, one of my favorite times of my life.
When would that be a good time to go, by the way?
Um, we were there in September, October, and it was great because there weren't a lot of people. I think that was a perfect time, one of the shoulder seasons. So maybe in the spring also when you have nice low tides too, because there are certain places where you have to have a low enough tide to get around a headland, or you can't. You're stuck. We were stuck on a beach called Chilean Memorial for almost a whole day, one day, to wait for the tide to go out so we could get to where we needed to be.
Oh, that's kind of cool.
Yeah, it's like a 12-mile hike from Rialto Beach or from the Ozette parking lot. So it's gorgeous. Upper Royal Basin over by the swim area. That
Okay.
is an amazing hike with a lot of bugs up by the lake. Appleton Pass was a really good one.
Well, I'm not familiar with that one. Where's Appleton Pass?
It goes from the Elwha Valley in Olympic. You hike over Appleton Pass next to Oyster Lake, and then we exited out the Solduck Valley on the other side.
Speaking of the Elwha, I worked at the Seattle Times when the Elwha Dam was being removed. And the Seattle Times did an incredible job covering that project. I have not been actually since the Elwha's been free flowing. Have
I
you
haven't
been?
either. I have not. No, I worked the year that I was an interpretive ranger at Olympic was the last dam summer. We had official pins that the National Park Service actually approved for us to wear that said it was the last dam summer because it was the summer before they pulled the dams out. And I knew some of the people that worked on the revegetation project up at the top once that the water was drained out, and they kind of had been doing studies while I was there to see what plants might grow um once it's exposed muck instead of lake. So that was kind of interesting to see.
Let's talk about a place that has you've always wanted to visit, but it's for whatever reason it has eluded you.
Hmm. I would like to hike up to Seven Lakes Basin in Olympics. Um, the Enchantments is an area that I'd like to go to. When I got hired, offered the job at North Cascades, I thought, oh, I'm going to get to go to the Enchantments. And then I found out, no, that's Forest Service. That's not even in our park. So I never made it down there to do that hike. And I wasn't in great shape at that time. And I have since gotten in better shape. And maybe one of these days I'll get to go hike that, at least a day hike up there to see some of those lakes.
That's so awesome. Well, let's talk briefly about some campgrounds. Where do you recommend RVers plan to camp when they head out to either Olympic National Park or the North Cascades National Parks? Where kind of some good RV related campgrounds you'd suggest?
Blaylock is definitely going to be one of the most beautiful places you can camp with your RV. None of the national parks here have hookups for RVs. They're all dry camps, I believe. There are some amazing views of the beach out at the Claylock campground. It can be hard to get into, but if you can get into that one, then that's definitely one that I would recommend. In North Cascades, you've got like Colonial Creek campground, which is kind of remote. I don't know if they have, when I was there, we didn't have cell service out there. So it can be a little bit, it's remote. And a lot of people don't really expect that. And there were some incidents where luckily there was park staff around to be able to help. But that's one where you just want to be aware when you go there that you may not have cell reception. You may rely on somebody driving out to get help for you. But that one's really nice. It's right by Diablo Lake. It's up Thunder Arm from Diablo Lake. There is occasionally a moose there. I've spent some time searching for the moose, trying to see the moose. And that's why I went out on the kayak the one day. I did not see the moose. The next day, a little kid came in and showed me a picture he took of the moose at Diablo Lake on the day that I was there, and I did not see it, and he did. So at least I got to see a picture of the moose.
Can I ask you about Solduck?
Yes, I haven't checked out the campground.
Because the RV campground there, I believe, has at least water and electric, but that's kind of more of a resort camp. I mean, well, not the campground, but the Solduck Hot Springs is more of kind of a, you
Yes, I
know,
think that's run by a different organization.
yeah, I think that's like an Aramac run kind of whatever, but it's within the confines of the Olympic
Yes,
National Park.
it is. And I haven't stayed there. I've hiked up there. Lovely area. The Solduck Falls is beautiful. So yeah, that would be, if they have hookups and everything too, that would be a really good recommendation.
Okay. Let's transition a little bit here and kind of discuss some of the changes that the federal government is making to our national parks. So, first, besides kind of what we've all been reading in the news about these massive layoffs, what information can you share that maybe you have heard that's kind of going on behind the scenes as the domino effect of these massive layoffs?
There have been a lot of visitor center hour changes. where they're opening later, they're closing earlier. There's locations that are no longer doing tours at all, ranger-led tours. Some of the cave tours are being canceled in some locations. Just there's just not enough people to working to be able to provide the service that we would like to be able to provide for people.
So, in your opinion, what do you think visitors can expect this summer if they're planning to visit any of the Pacific Northwest kind of four national parks? And I say four because I'm also including Crater Lake in Oregon.
I would expect for this year that because there are going to be seasonal staff being hired, that hopefully it won't be too much of a disruption in service. There will likely be less, if any, of the interpretive ranger programming, like the evening programs that they do in the campgrounds.
Yeah,
Because
the cool ranger talks.
yes, the cool ranger talks, because that
Yeah.
involves you have to have people work different shifts in order for someone to work that late shift that night to do the evening programs in the campground. And there may not be enough staff at a lot of places for that to happen.
What about ranger patches for the juniors?
Oh, the
My
junior
kids,
ranger.
they love the junior ranger program. I
So
wonder
do
if
the
that's good.
adults. Yeah.
Yeah.
People love the junior ranger program.
Yeah.
It may be harder to find a ranger to do your swearing in and give you your badge. But I think hopefully it will still be available. A lot of times people go to the visitor center to do those.
Yep.
So you're just going to have maybe the shortened hours where you don't have rangers there as many hours, but hopefully there will be somebody on staff at least part of the day. I know I used to work the ranger station I worked at in Olympic was at Mora Campground out by
Okay.
Rialto Beach.
Yeah.
And we were very lucky that year. We had funding to have two interpretive rangers out there. And I think we had a seasonal law enforcement and a regular law enforcement officer. So we were actually open occasionally at the ranger station there. And visitors would come in and they would be like, this ranger station has never been open. I've wanted to they like to get their passport stamp for their national park passport. And they're like, this is one of the hardest ones to get because it's never open. And so that was a great summer. We were open quite a bit. That will likely not be open this year, I would assume. I would guess they have no interpretive staff out there and probably one law enforcement ranger.
Interesting. Okay. Well, then where do you think visitors should be able, or those who are planning a visit, go to find kind of the most current information about the status of these? Would it be just straight on each of the national parks website?
Yes. Sometimes the national park websites don't get updated super fast. Usually when you first go to a national park website, there's like red headlines at the beginning that let you know if something has changed. So if there's something closed, a campground's closed, or visitor center hours have changed or something like that, that's a good place to find that. Friends groups for those different parks that are on Facebook are
Okay.
handy spots to look for current conditions, like the Hoh River Road washout. I
Yep.
have been kind of following that, and people in one of the friends groups for the Olympic National Park have been really up to date on if they're going to get the funding or not to repair that and when they expect to do it. And
Looks like it's underway.
it
The
sounds like it.
governor came through and then the city, Matt, they had to do a percentage of a match. So it looks like the whole road will get fixed, which is great.
Yeah, because they originally had canceled everybody's reservations up there and said, sorry, we're not going to be able to be open in time, if at all.
I'd like to ask you about timed entry. While this practice kind of started during COVID, what's been your observations on this program with regards to its impact on visitation, the health of the park, and for guest experiences? And then I'm going to comma and all of that. What is it going to mean for this summer? Are they doing timed entrances? Do they not have the staff to kind of, is it going to be back to the free for all? So I'm just curious on the whole timed entry stake.
At the parks, we did not have the time to entry at either of the ones I worked at. It sounds like Mount Rainier had kind of decided they didn't, at least just from things I've heard, it looked like it didn't really work out great last year, and it didn't sound like they were going to do it this year, but I'm not positive. I'd have to investigate that. It would be useful in a lot of ways, not having as many people in the park at the same time. trying, because you're competing for a limited amount of bathroom space and parking space. And if you get too many people out at Olympic, we get too many people out at Lake Crescent, we get slammed. And people park on the vegetation all over the place because there's just not enough room. So I feel like as far as protecting the resource, the timed entry is probably very helpful to kind of spread out that visitation. As a local who lives here and would like to be able to go to the park anytime I want to, I don't love it. That, I totally understand that point of view too. It's like growing up, we could go whenever we wanted. You could go on a Sunday drive, and if you wanted to go into the national park, you could. But it sounds like now that isn't always an option.
Okay. Well, I realize the impact that the federal government is having goes beyond just our national parks. Do you have any insights or thoughts about what this may mean for our other federal lands, like our DNR and BLM and our other public lands?
Yeah, it sounds like the Forest Service is going to be one of the hardest hit. They had already done a hiring freeze. They were not hiring any interpretive ranger type staff at all this year. And that was before any of the changes that have been made recently, because they just didn't have the budget for it. And so now the people that were remaining were probably mostly firefighting crew, biologists, forestry type positions, and then law enforcement rangers. And those are the ones that are getting cut now. So it's,
Do you think we'll see more closed gates?
oh
Do
yeah,
you think that it'll just be
definitely.
closed gates? So we're going to lose access to our public lands because the gates will just be closed.
Yeah, I believe probably very likely, at least some of the locations, it'll just be, there's no staff. I know I was reading that this year up Snoqualmie area, there had been a snow park that had been opened for the first time in a long time in the winter, and they had to shut it down once the layoffs started happening because they had no one to staff it, and it's just too dangerous to have it open and encouraging people to go there that could get hurt if there's no one there that can help them.
Yeah, interesting. What is your hypothesis if you had a crystal ball or the old school magic eight ball, like the
Hmm.
magic eight ball? Yeah. For what our public lands may look like in the next 2 to 4 years.
Oh, you're killing me a little bit with that. I am hopeful that they will stay a lot the way that they have been. I feel like the forests are probably, it sounds like they're going to be logged quite heavily. So you'll probably have more areas that will be closed due to logging. You could have potentially increased chance of risk of fires starting up from the logging. They do try to mitigate that as much as they can. I'm hopeful that we'll be able to keep it the way it is, but it's really hard to know if it starts getting sold, if sections of national parks get sold to private enterprise, you could have situations where not everyone is able to go there anymore. Only some people are allowed to get in. I mean, right now, like you said, we have some time to entry stuff. So that kind of limits who's in there at any
But you can
given
still
time,
get access.
but you can still get access. And if things are sold off to private companies, that can make it quite a bit more difficult to access.
Well, I have one final question for you. What does public lands mean to you?
Public lands, are just places that are protected for future generations and places where anyone in America can go and experience what it was like to live here maybe before all the people were here. Places where you can reconnect with nature, discover things about yourself, push yourself. Just you can get out. I started getting into birding when I started working in the parks, and so just getting out and getting to know the animals that used to be all over this area, and now they're confined to these national parks, being able to go and experience that and learn about all of that stuff. It's just really good. It's opportunities to study what it could be like. It's just, I don't know, there's so many different uses, different cultures, different, we have so many people that come here from other countries that want to visit our national parks for various reasons. Everyone brings their own reason why they want to see the national parks or the Forest Service land, or, you know, the beautiful beaches or the mountains. And to be able to have that access is just so important as a part of the public lands.
Well, Hope, thank you so much for coming on the show today. I really appreciate you giving of your time and having this conversation. It was absolutely wonderful. So thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
I hope this episode has you reflecting on your memories of time spent enjoying our national parks. Because, like you, we are all public landowners. I will leave you with this. I read this quote from one of the Resistance Rangers as they shared an online statement in SF Gate. They said, quote, "I would not be the person I am today without America's national parks and public lands. The National Park Service preserves the best of this country, from our wild spaces to our cultural heritage, the stories and landscapes that show us who we are and who we want to become." Thank you again for listening to RV Out West. I sincerely appreciate it. If you like this episode, please share it with your family and friends. I'd also like to invite you to follow RV Out West on Instagram and Facebook, where you can join in on the conversation. Next week's episode, we check back in with Sarah of Washington State Parks, and we learn about some new developments within the park system, as well as she teases us a bit about the new state park that is under development. So be sure to tune in next Monday. Thanks so much for listening to RV Out West. Join us again next week. Please like and subscribe to our podcast on Apple Podcasts or wherever you choose to get your podcasts so you never miss an episode. I sure would appreciate it if you left a rating or a review of the show. Special thanks to Scott Holmes Music for providing us the intro song, We Are One. RV Out West can be found on Instagram and Facebook, where you can interact with us and follow along on our RV adventures around the Pacific Northwest. So get out there, explore, and go see what's beyond the horizon.